Hello and welcome to another LinkedIn Live with me, James Highett-Smith, founder of Clark Smith Boutique Executive Search Firm. Before we get started on today's topic, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and Spotify, catch our latest podcasts and through LinkedIn with our newsletters. So if you want to keep up to date on what's happening in the world, interviews with founders, leaders around different topics, AI, technology, and even investors, we'd love to see you there. So this is still a topic that divides people. I don't necessarily understand why. I think it's one of the most important parts of any recruitment process, because the fact is someone can look amazing on paper. They can impress in interviews, but if you don't talk to people that have worked with them before, you're not getting the full picture. And I still see it too many times. It's an afterthought. Even people who have worked for me, I've been caught up by their references, and it's a box checking exercise. It's not an investigative type of process. And it's a missed opportunity. Not only can references provide you with validation of what someone's been saying, what their real involvement is. You can get away from the bias of I did this, or I led this in the team. You can get a real world view of what it looks like. And you get to uncover other aspects like how to set someone up for success. What do they need? How do they need to be managed and coached and led? Because that's critically important as well. You want to make sure that your next hire is not only the right person, but you're setting them up for success as well. So, I mean, why do this? I mean, personally, if I'm going to buy something, I will look for reviews. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a new bike or new running shoes. I'll look for reviews about that, and you always take it with a pinch of salt, right? It's not about purely saying, well, we did this, we did that. You've got to have that critical eye. I think the what is it, the thing with Amazon, or if they've got too many 5-star reviews, you almost want to discount that because they could be paid for. So you want to have that critical, curious, investigative type of idea when taking references. And I think the other aspect, and I think this goes for all interviewing and hiring processes, it's all about pattern recognition. So what are the patterns and themes that someone's seen through their career? Because even in the modern world, past performance is still the best predictor of future success. But by spotting the themes and patterns that come out of both interviews and references, you can see and start to build a picture of what that trajectory might look like with as much certainty as really possible. Otherwise, it's just stick a finger in the air and guess. We don't want guesswork. It's not a gambling process. We want to invest in the right individual that is going to help your business across in their value creation plan. So super critical part of it. Now, if you've been following our series, we've talked about the alignment process, scorecards, attraction, assessment, and references are really building on that. So there are two types of references. So you've got the official references, where you will ask the individual, the candidate that you're talking to go out and give you the name, or give you the names, numbers, contact details of people that you've carefully selected. And the second part is back channel references, and that's the real controversial part. I've got my own views on that, and we'll come on to that a little bit later in this discussion. So, official references. Now, a lot of the mistakes that I see people make is they will purely just ask for who was their previous boss, or who can give them a reference. And there's two mistakes with this. Number one, the bias of individuals is naturally they are going to choose someone that they worked well with in the past, that they've gotten on well with, that they know is going to say really positive things about them. It doesn't give you that true sense of what they've really done. So through the interview process, you would have talked about different scenarios, difficult things that have happened, and you will use those data points. You want to get names, you want to know who's been involved in those kind of critical key decision points in their career in order to start to build a picture of the people that you want to talk to. The other mistake that I see people make when it comes to references is they don't do it, or they send out an automated email with just a checkbox exercise. That doesn't give you any real information about confirming, other than confirming the date of their employment and their job title, which adds zero value at the end of the day. And we want this to be a super valuable process. So make sure through that interview process, whoever's conducting the interview, they are gathering the names of people at critical inflection points in their career. Naturally, we're going to talk about difficult scenarios, key decisions that had to be made, things that maybe didn't go as well as planned or could have been done better. So we want to pick out those names, and we've got the stories. So immediately you've got validation points for what the candidate has been saying. So you want to make sure that it is being tracked and then validated with the individuals that were involved in those key points. Bonus tip: if someone won't give you that reference, an alarm bell should be ringing. Why won't they introduce you to those people? Now, they might have lost contact with a certain individual, but wonders of the internet, we can generally find these people pretty quickly and easily. I prefer to ask permission first. If they can't do it, make sure that we can do it ourselves. So use that to validate the stories and the patterns that you've seen and identified through the interview process. Understand, context is critical. So understanding the context that they work with someone. And many companies talk about 360 feedback, managers, peers, and subordinates. So particularly when leadership hiring, that is, again, what you want to be looking at, that kind of 360 circle of people that they've worked for, people that they've worked with, and people that have worked for them, so that you can build that picture. And again, by leading that conversation around who you want to speak to, that will give you control of that reference process to make sure that you can get out of it what you need to get out of it. End of the day, that is probably the number one priority. Obviously, when you're talking to these people as well, you do want to look at, what areas did they excel in? What areas weren't they so good at? What areas did they improve in over that time? And ask them about their opinions. And it's going to be opinions. So there'll be factual elements that you can validate, that tally with what the individual has said through meetings and conversations. But you'll also get their opinions and their viewpoints on what could they have done differently, what could they have done better. And again, I think the most critical part of interviewing references is not about the first question. It's always about the follow-up. So be curious, be inquisitive. Why did that happen? What could have done differently? Dig behind it. Use that kind of 5 why framework of asking why five times as to why that happened, why they didn't get on with that individual, why they left, why their performance dropped or improved, what were the catalysts for this? Because again, these give you invaluable data points, not just in terms of ratifying and validating your decision to hire someone, but also in terms of are they, what are their capabilities, what environments are going to help them thrive, help them grow, develop, and improve. And how does that map to your organization, your ways of working, and the job that they're going to be doing? I love this one, and credit to Jeff Smart and Randy Street for this. You always want to ask a reference. What was their overall performance in your time working with them on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being worst person ever, I never want to see them again, and 10 being the best thing since sliced bread. And what you're looking for here is someone that's scoring ideally an 8 and above. But again, the follow-up question is, why are you giving that score? Again, think about the language that you use when you ask these questions. You want to make sure that you're not getting a canned answer. You're getting an answer that really kind of digs behind this. And again, it's getting people to think about it. So another example of this is if you've got a story saying, well, this individual struggled in this particular project and this time and this decision point, what's your recollection of that? What did you see happen? Because you automatically get people thinking back. So rather than the very canned response of, well, they can do this, they can do this, you're getting people to think back to that real time, and you'll get a much more truthful and genuine answer as to what happened in that. And then you can really kind of poke about and drill down into it. So, you also want to be looking at, I suppose, the words, the language that they use, the emotion, the enthusiasm that they talk about this individual. Again, critical indicator, and have that investigative, critical eye, in you, so that you are spotting anything that doesn't seem aligned with what you expect to hear. And that's the trick, right? It's how does that, what's behind what they're saying? You can even ask that as well. So references are such a critical point for validating what you've seen, essentially ratifying your decision to hire somebody. Provide those deeper insights, understand the patterns that exist, and you'll own the slate of people that you want to speak to and use the information that you've gathered. A key thing that I've been talking about here is that critical thinking. So it's natural to have bias. We all have biases. Now, people that work with them that liked an individual are going to have a positive bias towards that individual. Someone who didn't like them, didn't get on with them, is going to have a negative bias to them. So we always want to have that bias framing in mind, so that we're not taking things at face value. And I think that's another really important point here, is not taking things at face value, but looking to understand the story behind what's being said. We're going to cover the very controversial topic of back channel or backdoor references now. So I think, there's certain people out in the market who think that back channel references are, the golden bullet when it comes to references. Now, I think it's a very dangerous game to play when it comes to back channel references. Not something that I am a fan of. They can have their place when something isn't all that it seems. But, if you're in an interview process and you're taking back channel references without asking an individual, what happens if they find out? What happens when they find out? You're going to lose trust. You're going to make them feel like, they're being put out. And some might say, well, they should expect us to do it. But this is about building trust through an interview process. It's a big decision for the individual. It's a big decision for the organization that's hiring. you know, if you take, for example, if you're buying a house, you get a limited amount of time to actually explore the property that you're looking at. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make in your life. Now, if you want to go and talk to the previous owner, you will ask the permission to do that. Um, I mean, property doesn't have emotions and feelings, but the risk of getting a negative response from an individual, particularly someone that you might really rate and be very excited about, is huge. I don't think it's necessarily the right thing to do. I think the other aspect, my opinion on the other aspect of it, is that bias in side of things is extremely high. You have very little context about working with that individual and how they worked with. You're very open to someone having a personal dislike of that individual. So, in my opinion, you want to focus on official references. You want to do it at the end of the process, so you're not, constantly asking people to hand over and trouble people that they've worked with in the past. And you want to be very intentional and purposeful. Right at the beginning of our series, we talked about the scorecard. So each role, what the vision, mission, values, and purpose of a role is. You know what outcomes you're looking for. You know what skills and attributes you need in an individual. And again, this is a point where you can help to validate that. And overall, through all these data points that you're pulling together through every touch point and conversation you have with a candidate and with their peers, their bosses, and their subordinates, that will help to bring all of the story together and provide the right patterns that you can say, we get this. We understand where the positives are, where the negatives are. We know how to set someone up for success, how to get them to do their best work. And through this process, rather than going behind someone's back and talking behind them, almost as if you're trying to date someone and you go and speak to their ex, you're going to get quite a different viewpoint if you haven't set it up properly in the first instance, particularly if someone isn't aware that that's what you're going to do. So super important. References, I think, are still one of the biggest missed opportunities for organizations. At Highett-Smith, we do that for the companies because we build those data points. Our process, my process is designed to pull out this information and make sure that we have it, and so that we can go and validate these stories. So if you've got any questions around this, let me know. I think pattern recognition is a critical skill for recruiters. You will see the patterns that we identify through our podcasts with leaders, and what leads them to success. So please do like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.